Hello and welcome to another Retfurb video. Today we're going to refurbish this Selle Italia Titanium Flite seat. Hopefully that's the correct way to say it. We will be replacing the red covering with a black covering and replacing the lettering on the outside. So to start with, we need to get a pair of pliers and start peeling the leather from underneath. Just working your way around carefully not to damage the plastic. So in this case the leather was peeling out quite easily. The glue was quite old and crusty, so it wasn't really doing much anymore. At the back of the seat there's some small staples that are holding it in place. This is why this bit tends to be a little bit more trickier to get off. So now the underside's sort of released. We now need to start working around peeling off of the foam. Now you need to be careful with this because some places will be stuck more than other places. So if you're too quick or pull it too hard, you'll end up peeling off a lot of foam. So you just need to try and minimise as much foam you peel off as possible. Otherwise it will take more sanding and you may have to take off too much foam, which you don't really want to do. Now I'm just using a blade to go around to try and release it a bit from the edges. This did work good, but you do also need to be careful with this because again you'd end up cutting off too much foam. I did make a bit of a mistake at the top. When I tried to slice the leather off there, I ended up slicing into foam, so I had to sort that out when it came to sanding it. On this part I thought it might be best to separate the leather, just because it was a little bit more trickier trying to peel the back, and while the front was sort of still stuck down, which did make it a bit easier, but obviously you have to be careful again not to damage the foam while you're doing this. Now just continuing to trim the edges with a blade, trying to separate the foam from the leather on the edges. That's the back half done, now onto the front section. So now the old leather has been removed, we can now look at shaping the foam just to get rid of sort of any marks that have been left whilst removing it. Any bits of foam that have been dug out, we just need to sand that smooth. Here I'm just using an electric belt sander, which works perfectly for this. If you try doing it by hand, it just won't work. Well, I've tried to do it and it just takes ages. So this makes light work of it, and as long as you're careful and just do it steady, it does a good job. So on this part of the foam, it had a groove in it. This is where the leather had two colours, so there's a seam running along this line. So you just need to sand this out so it's nice and smooth, so it won't be noticeable when the black leather goes on top. So this belt sander is ideal for doing the sort of intricate areas around the back. You can be quite precise with it if you're careful. So it may seem like I'm removing a lot of foam with a belt sander, when in fact it's not very deep at all. In most areas it's a maximum of 1 mil, I would say, maybe slightly more in some of the areas where the foam sort of pulled off a bit, but generally it's not a lot at all. Here I'm just having a quick look around, making sure that I've got everything smooth, and anything that needs adjusting or a little bit more taken off, so I can just check that before I go any further. Now it's time to apply the spray adhesive. Now I give it quite a few good coats all across the top and then up underneath where it sort of wraps under. Now you could protect some of the rails and the plastic underneath if you wanted to and stop as much spray adhesive going on it as you'd like. But the problem is when you come to put the leather on it anyway, you'll end up putting quite a bit round on various things, so for me I didn't think there's much point. I've got some solvent based degreaser, which is what you use on vehicles when they prep them for paint. So this is ideal. Once the leather's been fitted and it's all finished, you can just go around and wipe it all up clean underneath and make sure there's no adhesive left. It doesn't mark the leather and it doesn't leave anything on any of the plastic or any of the metal underneath. Also, the issue you've got if you do start masking it up underneath, when you do come to fit the leather, if anything sticks to it, it'll be a right mess. You'll end up pulling off the masking, you'll end up sticking it to the leather, so it'll just make hard work of it. And that's the leather part also, with a good coat of adhesive applied to it. And here we are ready to put the leather onto the seat. Now this is where things start getting a bit more trickier. You need to be a bit more careful when you're doing it. It is quite forgiving, you can sort of peel it on and off a little bit, but obviously you don't want to do it too much if possible, especially on the foam area. It's not so bad when you get underneath and you're just on the bare plastic, you can sort of peel it on and off quite a few times and then just apply more adhesive. So yeah, just be careful when you lay the seat foam on top of it. Just make sure you get it as central as possible. It makes it easier when you come to sort of pulling the leather around. Here I'm just pulling the leather around the sides, just making it a little bit more stretched. You don't want to go too mad, but you just need to pull it down so it's a little bit tighter. This will also help when you come to wrapping it around underneath. The nose section needs to be pulled a little bit more. This is to get rid of any wrinkles, so when you do fold it up underneath you don't sort of see any wrinkles around the edges. Just taking my time working my way around with the leather. It doesn't matter if you peel it off a couple of times, just need to make sure that you pull it so the wrinkles are removed on the visible surface. I'm going to give the inside edges another coat of adhesive, just where I've been pulling it on and off. Obviously some of the adhesive has lost its stickiness. I want to make sure I give it a good coat to make sure that it sticks properly for the finished item. What I didn't say is when you do put adhesive in, it's best to allow it to sort of tack off a little bit in between. Just makes it easier when it comes to pushing it against the other surface, it grabs quicker. Now it's time to trim off some of the excess leather. Now you could, if you wanted to, use the old leather you take off as a template for the new bit, so when you wrap it on you've got the right size. But the reason I don't like doing this is because if you don't stick it in the correct location, it'll end up causing you issues where it's not wrapped round enough. So I prefer to do it like this and just go around and trim it off. Now these are rubbish scissors I've picked up. I'm not sure why I grabbed these over the other ones I've got, but it obviously does the job eventually. This again is where you just take your time around the edges as you wrap it around, trying to get it as smooth as you can. Inevitably you're bound to get a couple of wrinkles in it, but very minimal, they won't affect anything. Just try and sort of pull it round as you go along, and then you just trim it to the correct places. Here I'm just going around with the blade, just trimming it up, trimming the leather around the plastic contours. It will seem like the wrinkles won't go away. You might think that, oh, there's way too much leather here to try and get rid of it. But if you just keep working it, keep pulling it as you sort of try and stick it down, you'll find that you will get rid of most of them, if not all of them. When you're tucking this part of the leather next to the rails, just be careful what tool you use. I've used a screwdriver here, which is not ideal. I just grabbed it because it was the closest thing next to me, but I was quite careful when I was pushing it in. If you use anything too sharp, you'll rip the leather. So ideally something blunt, something maybe like a plastic card or something like that, just so you can tuck it in behind. Now just rubbing along with the tool next to the rail just to get that area stuck down nice and firmly. You could try and get your fingers in there, but it will be a little bit tricky with the area, so it is easier just to rub along with the tool. Obviously a plastic tool preferably. This little bit looked like it wasn't stuck down, but it actually was. It was just slightly on the edge, so later on I'll go back and just wipe a little bit of glue under that. Here's the final hurdle for wrapping the leather around the front nose, which is always going to be the trickiest part with the amount of leather. But again, just take your time. Most of it will smooth out nicely. These are the final stages now, just working around the inside, making sure it's got good adhesion, putting pressure on all the areas. And that's all the leather now wrapped around, finished. Looks pretty good. A couple of areas underneath it probably could have been smoothed out a little bit more, but on the most part it's gone quite well. It looks a bit messy with the glue underneath, but like I say earlier, we'll clean this up. Now we come to fitting the decals. These are heat press vinyl. We're cut using a plotter. These are placed in the correct area. Then you apply a Teflon sheet over the top and then apply heat. Normally when you apply this type of vinyl you put it in a heat press, but obviously you can't do this with a seat. So I just use an iron, just hold it on there, just check and make sure that it is stuck down correctly. This particular brand of heat press vinyl needs to go in the heat press for about 20 seconds on a certain heat. So obviously with the iron, it's a little bit more harder to judge. So you just need to keep looking at it, checking before you're peeling it up, and then going over it again. Obviously when it looks like it's been stuck down, you can peel the plastic off and then you can apply the Teflon sheet over the top again. Just be careful when you do this, because when the plastic sheet is removed, the stickiness that holds it in place is not there. So if you move the iron around too much, you may move the film. So your best stop with this, just to take your time with the heat, don't go too mad, keep lifting it up, keep having a look, see whether it's sticking down. And that's it, all completed, all the decals done, all the leather replaced. So what you didn't see before I fitted the decals was that I actually degreased it, removed all the adhesive underneath, anything that was on the leather has all been removed and cleaned up. I think overall it turned out quite well. Thank you for taking the time to watch the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it helps people. Please like and subscribe, and see you on the next one.